Mualani promised, compared even with Neuvillette, and of course, very punctually in very specific teams. Has already made 2 million, 1.9 million that you are seeing on screen, and practically under certain conditions almost T. Any player with knowledge of the game can make that million, but as we know in Genshin, a spectacularly high number, Ula, is not always equivalent to a good character. So today, we're going to talk about Mualani no longer. You already have the build, the teams, and the first impression, but of the reality of the character, since to this day it seems more a complete bug than a character. I think it's very inconsistent and well, there's always the hope that it's fixed in quotation marks with future characters. But I think there are things that aren't going to fix future characters. I think there are things that should even send us an email with protohemas, and now we will comment and see if it is more a bug or a character of their own who have tried to make it. So leave a good like, a good ulti of Bennett. Subscribe, leave a good comment for the algorithm. Leave me in the comments if you have Mualani and still playing Mualani. What trouble you have seen before watching the video and knowing what I think, and now, yes. Well, you know it doesn't cost you anything. It's free. So running around and watching you. Thank you for that piece of likes, subscribe, and so on. It's helped a lot. Position the channel. Well, normally and more in free-to-play, I haven't regretted so far throwing him at anything, and unless Mualani doesn't know, I think it's gonna be the first character I regret having pulled out of me. Free-to-play account, and it was mostly the final decision, no longer by large numbers or such. It was about the content, I thought. At the beginning of NATLAN, it's very interesting to do everything that needs to be done. But if maybe he didn't pull out NATLAN's first character between getting him out and not getting him out, maybe it's more interesting to get it out to bring you content from that first new character next to Kachina. And then Kinish, you know that I'll take it out on my main account, and I really want the character. Whether it's bad or not, I don't care, and it was basically more of a decision than because I like the character at combat level. The design, you know, gives me a little bit more like most Genshin players. So, after this, in the free-to-play, we always try to get the characters to their full potential. Even with those free-to-play resources, 0 cents, no free-to-play like some people ask. But free-to-play, 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 not like some people think a bendy is free-to-play. And of course, we've really gotten 300.4 million. Some 500,000 ulti, that's fine. But this doesn't really compensate for the problems he has. He listed them, I explained them, and you'll see them in the background so you don't go around anymore. Well, these numbers aren't bad at all. They're really good numbers. The problem you have to start with is that. Really, the Mualani kit on most occasions you're going to put 3 bites and 1 ulti. I mean, you're only going to get 4 punches. Since the 4 punches aren't critical, you're pretty lost. And what does this mean? I think that Mualani is one of the first characters capable of trying to recommend himself with a 90 probability and not 70, 75, and this already starts wrong because getting so much probability makes it difficult for you to get to a lot. Life, about 40,000, enough recharge because it costs 60, which will have to be 30. Your roofs are very complicated to get under certain circumstances. This is not the most problematic. This is alright. It would be kind of rocking so that not everyone can put 2 million in the ulti. It's not really a problem, but it's already a premise about the character. Now, the real problems are these. The first problem is that Mualani in the field has a continuous movement that you have to align with the enemies to win. Those little fish loads in here come a lot of trouble. The rest of the characters, when we hit normal attacks or skills, elemental or different combos, we usually have damage windows, or even if we don't touch the joystick motion, we don't move. Continues that even if you leave the joystick still, it will go in a straight line and you must correct continuously. And if you want to dodge too, either you reposition yourself, or you must give the dodging button that generates a dash that sends you to take. Buy back to the left to take super away and you're going to lose fish for bite or time to take out fish or go. To be so far away and maybe you even miss the bite. And this for starters is a problem because sometimes you don't. loads, and sometimes it takes longer than you need to make a load, and if you don't do the loads and bite with the 3, you charge on time, the talent of the little fish doesn't jump both times, and it doesn't give you enough time to do the 3rd bite. That is to say, if it was already difficult to put the 3 bites and the ulti by rotation, and if already of base are few hits of damage only. 4 if you miss one of the 4, because you already lose enough damage, and on top, then if you don't jump critical, then good. Worse yet, then here is another very annoying thing, and is that the enemies with hitbox, strange hitbox, a little high as big enemies, bosses with very big hitbox that are complicated to go through, because in theory Mualani crosses enemies, but against perfect small enemies it pierces them, but against great enemies it touches, and above all enemies they have. As for example the current cube of the abyss, that is the bug where we can most easily test Mualani, for example, you cannot. Doing the loads for this same boss of the cube has moments when it makes you a laser and its hitbox gets up a little bittle on the ground, and as you will be watching on screen, you can crash. Sometimes you win it against him, who will not give you loads. Enemy, if it is targetable while in laser mode with any equipment, the game you are able to beat, but like third, you can't earn loads to bite him and you lose all year, and apart from the example of the phases, and this is extrapolated to many more enemies of the whole game, the cube has this phase that rises, flies, and falls, and we could say good, but that phase really affects all the teams. If and not on certain teams it makes you lose seconds, that there would be no problem. But specifically to Mualani, if you make the 3 fish and nibble, and do not jump the P tier lobe, that regenerates you points up noctambulism so that the bar fills slower and can be more seconds in the field to make the 3 bites. Not only makes you lose the bite of that very moment, but you literally run out of 6 seconds. You take it apart, and you get it. Hence the damage literally just by that phase of rising up and being immune for a few seconds, you're running out of Mualani's damage. And that extrapolates to infinite enemies. There will be infinite enemies with 3-second phases of immunity like the cube. When fly and fall, they're gonna make you get rid of Mualani Shark, and they're gonna make Mualani useless, and you're gonna have to come back to rotate and throw things back and not generate energy, because the bites generate energy and stays totally useless character we follow, because it's not even half of the problems that the talent of time has. Well, make not the 3 loads of the fish that have problems, nor the bite happens that even when you do everything well attentive to this, because it's a problem even when you do everything right. We've been testing Mualani for hours. It turns out that the first second fish and balloon that appears that will be around here, that you will see what is spawning a point X a little away from Mualani, and say of noctambulism, and then make that 3rd bite, not because the reality is that they collide with the hitbox of some enemies, or that as much as you move towards the fish and balloon, you must dodge an infinite enemy things that can happen, or that even the distance to which you are not giving the time to approach you recover points of noctambulism you get directly from the shark. Doesn't pick it up, of course, and you lose the 3rd, or in some cases the 2nd bite. That's practically half from your damage. 2 of the 4 hits. Then really this balloon talent, that are 2 balloon fish that appear in the field, and they go towards you to recover 20 points of noctambulism from the bar each. At the end of the bar you disassemble, and you don't do anything anymore. You have to change the character. They're basically half bugs. Sometimes they don't get there, sometimes they move very slowly, sometimes you just have to put the last bite, and you're taking the stick, and since the fish doesn't arrive, you don't regenerate the bar, and you don't bite, and you disassemble. It's badly done at the level of giving rage, or it's annoying. It's awkward. Here we think Live Good, maybe a future character, or Larkant, like most of NATLAN's carries characters. Because they go with the noctambulismo points, not because maybe Larconte makes you add more points, because it would be a good solution. But of course it's the usual thing not to depend on future characters, but good would be a good solution. So far all this is pretty bugged is really upset. Then another problem they have is that they interrupt you, and interrupting it happens to him. Some carries and others can't be bad, or it may not be bad, and it's true that they're selling us the cone of Shilhin. Well, we'll sort it out and break it up. But if you don't want to play a team like that, and you want to play teams, well, if you're on a link, Nahida, something else. Future characters that this would also be solved, as I said at the beginning of the video, with good is. That depends on future characters, but is that it is very uncomfortable, because if they interrupt you sometimes they even disassemble you from the shark. And you lose all the damage basically. It's like very similar at that point to Scaramouche. There's an infinity of characters that although you're in some kind of cooldown mode or invention and you can keep hitting, and if you're interrupted, once you lose a little damage, but maybe you go to 90% damage or 80% damage, however, Mualani as well as Scaramouche, and you are interrupted once you lose such a number of seconds, that literal you will lose almost half, or the total of damage left to apply from Mualani. Then the ulti and torpedoes apply multi-target damage when you mark multiple enemies. Are basically Bogan the ulti if the enemy is an enemy who does not have phases of immunity or jumps and movements. Strangers or things like that, then you're going to hit her always, and it's a good damage, but the ulti, if in any case you throw her away. In a strange timing, you know that the ulti, according to the Castella, has several seconds delay until it impacts and does the damage. It has to do with which it is also possible that it may harm you some vaporized reaction, but especially if the enemy does anything strange that it is not to be in the field with the breast to receive the blow, the ulti boge. I've lost in abysses and in voices of the world with some rare phase of immunity or jumps or movements. I've lost enough. Ultis, you say, and the damage where it is didn't come out because it bugged, because I don't know how it's programmed, but it bugged and didn't. The ulti and does not appear the damage of the ulti and bothers. This is not in all cases, happens a few times. And as I say, depends, that the enemy has rare phases of immunity, or seeing that stranger above all of immunity, but it's also another problem. And with torpedoes, something similar happens when you mark enemies. If there are more than 2 or 3 enemies, your marks 2 enemies. And when you drop the bite jumps with a small delay torpedoes that also hit their enemies, these torpedoes, according to the amount of enemies, is a damage equivalent to the shark, level 3 bite, and can reduce the damage up to 70% of the original damage. Is to lose 30% of damage. If I were to put 500,000, because you would put maybe 300 and 400,000 is not much. Is not a problem. The problem comes in that also these torpedoes are bugged, not always come out torpedoes and not always impacting with the enemies marked. And already I speak of marked enemies because it is very clear that the torpedoes only jump to the enemies that you scored. You won't hit all the enemies of free, only those that you marked with the passive of the fishy ones through them, like Alani, but they are also bugged, nor impact all bites, nor all rotations, nor all the marked enemies. And here the other problem you have is that I thought that the symphony we thought good, like Nouvellette, that you can reboot the room, but you know that 2 of the 3 Bufos are from Bon Elementary Year, and Mastery and Mualani come spectacularly well, really, because she vaporizes all the blows. Well enough to activate the NATLAN set, you need to enter the first field as an Alani to give a basic and apply. And then, for example, Kachina or in the future Celonan do that hydrocrystallization reaction to activate the NATLAN set. Give us 40% of elemental damage bonus for 20 seconds that entering the field on many occasions in the lobism depends. It also bugs the Symphony, and the Symphony then has 30 seconds cooldown, so you don't jump, you lose the Bufo, and the Symphony is spectacularly inconsistent, unlike what I thought as an Alani in the open world, when you don't depend on a timing like in the Abyss, and you don't depend on doing things a little more precisely, but you can repeat and repeat and repeat and respawn the voices. There would be no problem because you just record yourself several shows, maybe until one has, say, the right Bufo of the Symphony, and it is very funny. However, in situations a little more delimited, the Symphonies a lot more inconsistent than I thought, and this problem happens with Bufos and 30 seconds of cooldown if you need to activate NATLAN set. So the Symphony, that's the weapon that could get the most damage in principle, is pretty inconsistent. I would recommend more the Weapon of the Forge, but of course, the Weapon of the Forge gives you 40 of life and harms you in normal attacks no more. It gives you crit value, with which it would be more complicated to weather the proportion with this weapon. And finally, and to finish the video, of course there is always no good, but Mualani is a character that will depend on future characters good can solve. Resistance interruption can solve and may not be solved by the issue of noctambulism points, so that Don't dig your fish so much and stay as long as you need in the field to make at least one enemy the 3 bites. Consistently can solve the element application with a Siangling 5 stars Mavuika, possibly, and that always vaporizes, but the issue of solving that last time does not impact by a lot of factors solved. The theme that many enemies completely screw up your rotation, because the fishy ones don't always do the loads, and it's bugged mostly enemies with very big or strange hitbox, or that the good passive talent torpedoes. The elemental that's like your own multi-target damage don't skip all the bites is a problem, and that I don't think a character. Future could improve it. Mualani reminds me right now more the NA even line, and then with Furina also did not fix. And people don't play it because of the discomfort their kit has and the loaded ones and so forth more than a character capable of competing with Novilet. We will see what happens in the future, and we will see if this really gets her today. Or you see they notice that it has many problems, and at least do not solve that at least its rotation can be consistent, its damage, and that it is not so simple to interrupt it. The bites and literally lose all the damage of the rotation because you do very few hits. And if not the Mualani test, it'll be for showcase videos for a lot of people making videos of a million, but people in the end uncomfortable characters. Ends up not choosing them and end up in summary losing sales and being forgotten characters, so we'll see what happens to all this, but so far these are all the problems we have detected after many hours of testing Mualani. Little more, share this video if any friend or friend tells you go. I want this shot by Mualani that I make is good character. Send him this video so that at least he knows what's good and what's bad and what's happening to him, and that maybe in pulls is a very risky bet. To improve the future, to leave a good like, a good digionit. To subscribe, leave a good comment. For the Grismo, thank you. For enjoying and watching the channel, you know. There are 2 free piles for us and it helps us grow a lot is recommended. The video is positioned, the channel explodes as always, so thank you very much, have very good day and bye.